Adolf Hitler. Photo details Germany, April 28, 1945. Hitler is responsible for leading the Nazi Party during WW2 and evoking the demise of over 6 million Jewish victims and the suffering of countless others. Hitler managed to come to power in part because there was already an undercurrent of anti-Semitism in Europe. His memoir warned of his dangerous ideals regarding purity and superiority, yet he manipulated his way to Chancellor of Germany in 1933. Hitler spent the subsequent years during WW2 imprisoning his victims in concentration camps ruled for the Nazi Party. Those who suffered at the hands of the Nationalist Party in Germany became refugees after WW2 and were displaced across Europe. Eventually, they began to seek restitution and healing by telling their stories and acquiring wealth from the now struggling Nazi Party. Survivors and modern psychologists use their experiences to understand how to prevent the events of the Holocaust from ever taking place again, as well as how to heal through literature such as Understanding Genocide, Man's Search for Meaning, Night, The Drowned and the Saved, and many more. Vladimir Lenin. Photo details 1923. Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, later known as Vladimir Lenin, was exposed to radical thinking while studying law at university. Around this time, his older brother, who served as a member of a revolutionary group, was dispatched. Lenin was later expelled from his university for his radical policies. Lenin became a revolutionary himself in St. Petersburg, Russia, but was eventually exiled to Siberia along with his contemporaries. It was in Siberia that he officially changed his name to Lenin and subsequently became a leader of the Bolshevik faction of the Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party. With German assistance, Lenin returned to Russia and successfully overthrew the country's provisional government in what is known as the October Revolution. The revolution incited 3 years of civil unrest, and once he was in power, Lenin disregarding those who were suffering under his rule and was entirely merciless toward anyone who opposed him. He suffered a stroke in 1922 and perished 2 years later with concerns about the potential of Joseph Stalin's rise to power. Elvis Presley. Photo details Graceland, August 16, 1977. Elvis was discovered right after he graduated high school in 1953, when he recorded a few songs at the Memphis Recording Service studio. The studio owner, Sam Phillips, was so impressed he invited the rock star back to record with guitarist Scotty Moore and bassist Bill Black. The trio was a radio hit which led to Elvis's first single with Sun Records, also owned by Phillips. RCA bought Elvis's contract in 1955, and he later produced the #1 pop crossover Heartbreak Hotel under their label. His career skyrocketed with a steady stream of #1 singles after Heartbreak Hotel. Elvis spent time in the Army from 1958 to 1960, and he won his first Grammy in 1967 for the gospel album, How Great Thou Art. He became known for his performances, entertaining audiences with scandalous dancing and hip shaking. The life of fame and fortune took its toll, however, and he suffered a heart attack in 1977. Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. Diana, Princess of Wales. Diana, Princess of Wales. Franklin D. Roosevelt. Franklin D. Roosevelt. Robert F. Kennedy. Robert F. Kennedy. Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. John F. Kennedy. Photo details Dallas TX November 22, 1963 John F. Kennedy was the 35th President of the U.S. and was slain while driving through a cheering crowd in Dallas, Texas, on November 22, 1963, near the end of his first term. During his short time in office, JFK created the Peace Corps, asked for funding for the mission that eventually put a man on the moon, proposed a civil rights bill, and publicly asked Americans to end racism, inspired the American people through his elegance and articulate speeches, and deterred the Cuban Missile Crisis without a war. JFK studied at Harvard University, served as lieutenant of a patrol torpedo boat stopping Japanese ships from delivering supplies to their soldiers in the South Pacific during WW2. After a traumatic incident where his boat was destroyed and part of his crew was lost, Lieutenant Kennedy led his men to safety and was awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Medal upon his return. JFK began his political career in 1946 when he ran for Congress in Massachusetts' 11th Congressional District. He went on to serve in the House of Representatives and the Senate before becoming president in 1961. Mark Twain. Photo details April 1910 Samuel Clemens, also known as Mark Twain, was a popular novelist, humorist, and journalist. He is known for his novels, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, as well as narratives such as Life on the Mississippi and The Innocents Abroad. Like his most famous characters, Clemens is said to have been quite the mischief maker as a child. In fact, the events of his childhood growing up in Missouri in the 19th century heavily influenced the content of his later novels. For example, though he was taught that slavery was a social right and was approved of by God, he was naturally disheartened by the institution, something he reflects upon in The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. He also witnessed several traumatizing events involving the deceased which take shape in his novels. Clemens matured under the instruction of Joseph P. Ament's Missouri Courier, and later published occasional works in his brother Orion Clemens' weekly newspaper. Eventually, he established his own journal in Iowa called The Muscatine before setting up a print shop which he abandoned when he moved to Ohio. He spent some time learning from riverboat captain Horace Bixby, earning adventures that also made it into his later works. By 1865, Clemens had gained literary notoriety and the name Mark Twain became famous. Nikola Tesla. Photo details 1943 Nikola Tesla was a Serbian-American inventor best known for creating the first alternating current AC motor. He and Thomas Edison were rivals, and though they both made accomplished discoveries, Tesla did not match Edison's financial success. Tesla immigrated to the U.S. in 1884, where he secured a job as an engineer at Edison's Manhattan headquarters. There Tesla improved the design for Edison's DC dynamos, for which he expected payment. He did not receive the compensation Edison had promised. He quit. After years of diligent work, in 1887-1888 Tesla received 30 patents and was invited to address the American Institute of Electrical Engineers. There the man who launched the first AC power system, George Westinghouse, The 1890s warranted much of Tesla and Westinghouse's success. Tesla invented electric oscillators, meters, and the Tesla coil. He became one of the first people to experiment with X-rays and short-range radio communication. Tesla, Westinghouse, and General Electric created the first modern power station by installing AC generators at Niagara Falls. Tesla's health declined in his final years, and he became obsessed with the number 3, as well the pigeons we would feed. He lived out the rest of his life in a New York hotel and continued to work on new inventions for as long as he could. Ulysses S. Grant. Photo details June 27, 1885 Ulysses S. Grant is best known as the 18th President of the U.S. and commander of the Union Army during the Civil War. He spearheaded Reconstruction in the late 1860s and was a strong advocate for civil rights. Grant wanted to bring reconciliation to the separated states as well as protect the Black Americans who had been freed. Grant was born Jesse Grant, but while attending the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, a congressman mistook his name as Ulysses, and he never corrected it. He served in the Mexican-American War before resigning his post and taking on life as a civilian. Several years later, he volunteered as a colonel at the start of civil unrest in America, and was appointed as general later that summer. Grant was a national hero after the success of the Union Army, and was later voted as the Republican candidate for president against Schuyler Colfax. Grant received more than 52% of the popular vote, and by 46, he became the youngest U.S. president to serve at the time. Abraham Lincoln. Photo details February 5, 1865 Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the U.S. and is responsible for enacting the Emancipation Proclamation, which began America's progression toward the abolition of slavery. He was a vocal advocate for freedom during civil unrest among the states, and as the war was ending in 1865, Lincoln's life was taken by Confederate sympathizer John Wilkes Booth. Lincoln was not only an advocate for civil rights, but he was a self-taught lawyer known for his honesty and his indiscriminate clientele. He and his wife, Mary Todd, had 4 children, 2 of whom passed before their father. He began serving in the U.S. House of Representatives in 1847 and was notably controversial because he opposed the Mexican-American War. Lincoln's Gettysburg Address legendarily explained the purpose for the Civil War and is famously studied to this day. He also advocated for the 13th Amendment, which outlaws slavery, and which was passed after his untimely demise. Albert Einstein. Photo details Princeton, NJ, March 1955 Albert Einstein spent the years leading up to and throughout WW2 earning his education and building his reputation as a notable professor at several prestigious universities across continental lines. After the war, he became a leading figure in the world government movement, declined presidency over the state of Israel, and he worked with Dr. Chaim Weizmann to establish the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Einstein is well known for his 1905 paper on the photon theory of light, in which he used what he discovered about the inadequacies of Newtonian mechanics to determine that E equals mA. A few years later, in 1916, he wrote about another revelation which hypothesized his theory of gravitation. Einstein is a Nobel Prize winner who spent his life studying quantum theory as a professor, ambassador, and clerk. He made discoveries which have since influenced the modern understanding of physics and relativity. Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the support and likes and comments down below, and also thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to see you in the next video. Then take care. Bye.